Let me begin first with an attitude of gratitude. This commemoration day has been made possible by so many different people who serve us so well every day, and we oftentimes don't recognize their talent day to day. We are certainly here in the great respect of our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMS personnel, our medical personnel. Let's please give them all a round of applause. Let me thank my colleagues in government. We had the great Andrea Stewart Cousins lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, Majority Leader of the State Senate. She's joined by colleagues Shelley Mayer, Jamal Bailey, and Peter Harcum, all of the New York State Senate. Thank you all for being with us on this day. I missed in the second row, I was including him with Assemblyman, Senator Elijah Reichlin Melnick. And we have Assembly Member Chris Burdick with us today, and perhaps other members of the State Assembly who are friends and are colleagues. I'm joined by my colleagues in government. You've already been introduced to the Chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin, and I'd like my friends and colleagues who are members of the Board of Legislators, please stand for the recognition you so deserve. And may I say, we're also joined by municipal officials from cities, towns, and villages. They too are our partners. I see mayors and supervisors amongst them. All of you, please stand so we can give you proper recognition. I see Mayor Bramson of New Rochelle, Mayor Belmont of Harrison, Mayor Marino of Portchester. Thank you for being with us today. And then finally, the executive team of the county government, the commissioners and the department heads, many of whom served prior to my tenure, but they've served us brilliantly. I'm honored that they are part of my friends, my circle of friends as they run this county. The commissioners who are here and those that are out there in the audience, please stand up for recognition. Thank you. It was on the evening of September 11th, 2001, that I had probably the most moving of the experiences that I've had. I had the opportunity to be in both the city of Rye and in the town of Mamaroneck, villages of Larchmont and Mamaroneck, for impromptu services that were held that evening, on the evening where that day the towers were taken down, the attack on the Pentagon, and the flight that completed its flight in Shanksville. And that evening when I got home, I walked in on my daughter, who was one day away from celebrating her 16th birthday. Tomorrow, add 20 years to that, she's a grown woman, 2 children of her own, one of whom has a birthday in a few days, her 6th birthday. But in that circle of life, she was a young girl one day away from her Sweet 16 party, which we postponed. And I had to explain to her the moment that we were in. And for all of you who are parents, you know there is no handbook that you're handed as a mother or father. You figure it out as you go along. And my daughter, beautiful and brilliant young girl, was crying uncontrollably, more for the tragedy of the day, but also for what she was going to miss on and how she knew that would change her birthday forever. And I told her the story that I've oft told in other settings about how on my 10th birthday, I was greeted after lunch with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy on that day. And that has certainly changed the way I look at my birthdays. But there were no words to console Megan, and we did the best we could. And as I just walked across the hallway in the upstairs of the house, I sat down and I had a cell phone of that day that was being charged. Now, if you remember cell phones from 20 years ago, they looked like a brick. They weren't these thin little cell phones that we're carrying around in our pocket now. But from that moment, I thought of something that has informed some of the comments that I've shared today. Some of my colleagues have heard this before. And I looked at the cell phone, and I tried to imagine a person who was in Cantor Fitzgerald or Aon, working at the upper floors of the tower, either tower, North or South Tower, who found out when that building shook that they were in a crisis mode and that in some short period of time, there was no means of escape from the tower. All the passageways were blocked. It was 110 stories to the ground below. There was no airborne rescue possible. And those cell phones of the day, those men and women picked up. You go through your own cell phone. You could do it now if you'd like. Look at the people you've spoken to in the last 12 hours. Your spouse, child, perhaps a brother or sister, coworker, somebody you know, most likely people that you loved. And imagine what they went through that day with their cell phone, that they picked it up and dialed for the last time to say goodbye to a person they loved. To the woman that they had built a life with, goodbye, I love you. Tell the kids I love them. I can't make it home tonight, darling, but I'll see you someday. Then there were other brave men and women who went up the tower. They didn't have time to pull out their cell phones. They were there to do a job that they were trained for, but nobody is ever prepared for. And that is to save other people's lives and put your life at risk. And they put their lives at risk, not just in the drama of a 110-story building, but anytime they walk into a fire site, because those firefighters don't know if the floor isn't going to collapse underneath them. That police officer that responds to a domestic disturbance at a home does not know that the aggrieved two people in that house, one of them doesn't have a gun and is prepared to use it, but they respond to the calls no matter what they are. And on that day, they responded to the call that existed, and they could see it as the fire trucks were coming over the Brooklyn Bridge, coming down the long, broad avenues of Manhattan. They saw where they were heading, and they knew what their job and their training was leading them to. And both police and firefighters, EMS, even members of the clergy who were there that day. We hope, as individuals, never to be put to that test. We hope that we're never tested to know that that fear that we all have about our mortality is now facing us right here, and that we get a precious few minutes to say goodbye to the people we love and to contemplate eternity. There are other men and women who, after that incident, responded to their duty and did it voluntarily, day and night, on that pile. They exposed themselves to chemicals that they did not know what was in it, and in fairness, they weren't told. But they'd come home at night to their spouses and their families, having done their job as Americans and putting their life in jeopardy. So on that wall, as well as in that ring around that statue, are people who died before their time, before the natural span of life should have been enjoyed. They weren't there to see a grandchild. They weren't there to go to another Super Bowl party. They weren't there to see a child graduate or to celebrate a 30th or 40th or 50th wedding anniversary. They gave up those years for us. We put their names on a monument, on a sculpture, and now we put some additional names on a wall to let them know, and the families of those people know, that that sacrifice is not forgotten, that the Americans who survived that day still appreciate that sacrifice, a sacrifice that the families are still making every night. The spouse goes to bed alone without that person that loved them and they loved. That is what today is about. A county government, it's not a state government, it's not a federal government. There are issues in the federal government to provide the resources necessary to help the health concerns of the 9/11 individuals who are still with us, that they get the proper medical care, and we urge the federal government officials to do everything they can to do that. But we at our level cannot forget, and that's why today we are here to unveil this addition to the original Rising to honor people who had their lives cut short because they served us as Americans. I pray that none of the rest of us will ever be put to the test that they were put to working on the pile, climbing the stairs of the towers, or being stranded at the upper floors of those towers. I hope that none of us ever face that test again. But I hope if we do, we will show the fortitude and the bravery and the outstanding demeanor and service that these people did. And we remember them forever because of that sacrifice.